Hello, and welcome to another episode of Adventures in Faith. I'm Preston Savelle, and I'm very happy to be with you here today, as well as to be happy with our special guest. Oh, I should say guest. It is it's a guest feeling because we just started doing this.
That's true.
But you guys are mainstays, obviously. We have Eric Deaton and Nikki Deaton. Thank you for being with me today.
Hi, everyone.
We're holding down the fort here. I should say we're holding down the fort here at the JSMI
right.
U.S. office,
Woo.
and we have been enjoying every bit of it. I
Rocking
know, but you know what? We've been learning, we've been growing so much. It's been such a fun process, and to be honest, I've really enjoyed being able to work with y'all. So this is the reason why I brought you here to just talk about that.
About how great it is to work with Preston.
No, you can tell me how great it is to work with me. No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, I'm so glad we've added you to the team. I mean, you're new to the team this year, 2024.
Yes.
Although this is not your first time here.
No.
Working here.
I was a different man at that point in time. I was what you would probably call a floater. And that doesn't sound like the most yay, exciting job.
That just means jack of all trades.
Yes, jack of all trades. So, I mean, I remember being in customer service. I remember data entry. I remember being in the maintenance with Scott and just being up to my ankles in sprinkler water, having no idea what I was even doing in the first place.
That was happening back then too?
Oh yeah. And then production, all these other things. But it feels very different being back now in this capacity. And honestly,
to those of you that are new to Adventures in Faith and JSMI, Preston is the grandson of Dr. and Mrs. Savelle.
Yes.
And so he worked here as a young person. Mm-hmm. How old were you when you worked here before?
Oh, man. I mean, I guess it would be early teens when I started doing it in the summers. So it would be my summer job.
So his summer job, sprinklers and anywhere they needed him.
I got a little lunch money for the next school year, which
so you go out and buy a new video game.
Oh yeah.
Movie money, whatever.
Snickers ice cream bar money for lunch. That's specific if you want. That's very specific if you want to ask.
Are you an ice cream kind of guy?
Yes.
Oh, me too.
What's your favorite ice cream?
I mean, chocolate chip cookie dough is where it's out for me. Do
you have a particular brand of ice cream that you?
Oh man. I mean, I grew up in the past being here around Brahms, so I was that was a part of it. But I also have an extreme ice cream dislike hate, and that is, I know you like this already, mint and peppermint.
You don't like mint anything.
I don't. Mint should only be in gums
she
or
likes
toothpaste.
Mint chocolate chip.
No, don't send Preston all your mint stuff just to convince him that it's good. He doesn't like it.
Unless you're cruising for a bruising, pal. Don't send me any of your mint. Mint should only be in toothpaste and mint and gum. That's my opinion.
Toothpaste
but
and gum.
I know that's a very polarizing opinion for some people. But all that to say, it's cool to come back in this new capacity, and especially all of us being on this adventure in faith together. It's something special and it's awesome. But I think it's important for all of us that I heard you heard a little bit about me.
No, we didn't hear about you because we want to hear about your adventure in faith back here.
Oh, okay.
That's what we were getting around to.
Okay, so I'll give you. How about this? I'll give you the rest of mine back to.
Give us the rest of the story,
and then I will hear the rest of your story.
Good deal. That's a good deal.
So I was working at the ministry all the way up to November. Actually, November 2015 is when I left to go to California. And
so you were how old?
I was, oh gosh, that was
2015. 9 years ago.
Yeah. So I was
24.
Yeah, 24. Literally right on 24.
And then why were you going to California?
Oh, this is my joke.
That's a loaded question.
Where I decided to pursue the most financially stable, secure job I could find, which was acting in California. And to be honest, I still love and have a lot of appreciation for acting. And I remember working with a variety of great people and enjoyed the amount of jobs I did. I was a dead guy in a lot of things, which was not hard at all.
Wow.
But I was
show us one scene that you might have done.
Ready? Yeah, I did it, Mom.
Such good acting.
No, but a lot. I feel like a lot of the last things I would get booked for a lot of times were thieves. Which I that kind of whenever you would hear somebody, people would be brutally honest with you oftentimes. So when people would say things, I remember I did an audition And I finished the audition, and the guy goes, you know who you remind me of? And I was like, oh, I'll take like a Matt Damon. I'll take a this. And he goes, a skinny James Corden, which is the guy from that nobody likes from one of the hosting shows. And I was just like,
that's funny.
So I didn't get the job is what you're telling me.
Yeah, but here you are hosting.
Yeah.
I'm going to go.
Yeah.
No,
hey, egg on that guy's face.
Egg on him. Shows you, pal. But no, so I worked.
So when you left here and you went to California for acting, had you already met your future wife?
That's what she was really.
What you were alluding to there. No, so I had been talking to Christian and we were dating. See, I got the timelines down. I started went on my first date with her April 26th of 2015. Okay. And we officially started dating after I asked her father's permission, April 28th.
Good guy. Pause. Good guy. That's a good guy.
He asked her father's permission.
Yes.
To date her.
Now, in all fairness, she did tell me I had to do that. So I can't take
I
can't be like, I was like, oh,
that was your idea.
I knew how to do it. She told me.
So then did you have to meet him before?
I met him on our first date.
Oh, okay.
We went to go see The Longest Ride. Okay, I did not expect to get into this, but if you all want to hear it,
we did.
You all want to hear it, don't you?
Yes.
We thought so.
This is gonna be like.
You want to get to know us, right? So this is a good way to get to know Preston.
So it was a brisk morning of April 26th.
A brisk morning.
No, I'd been talking to Christian back and forth for this period of time, and we had never set like the point of like when we said we were gonna go on this. We didn't even say the parameter that was gonna be on a date. We almost were talking like we were gonna hang out or something. So I remember picking up my siblings from school, and then I went back to my grandma's house, and my aunt was there and everything. And then I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go meet this girl I've been talking to." And they're like, "So it's a date?" And I was like, maybe it is. And so they're like, "What are you wearing?" All this stuff. And so they try to help me out as best as I can. This is how the person you see now is very different than the person that was circa 2015, because your boy, I'll give you an example. I had these favorite jeans. This is getting way off, but I'm sure you'll enjoy this. I had this favorite pair of jeans that I would wear where I liked the way they fit, but they were what we call high waters, which now people wear all the time. True. So I was forward fashion, but I thought I'm going to mitigate this factor by wearing my high top Converse. So it didn't work. But anyways, regardless of that, I ended up going to this date with Christian. I was not prepared whatsoever. I took her, there was nothing near her hotel to go eat at besides the Chili's. So our first date was Chili's. And then we saw The Longest Ride, which was a Western notebook guy who created it, whatever. So despite all those factors against me, she liked me enough that I met her parents. And the first thing her dad did was try to get me to eat a hot chili pepper and get myself burned up as all get out. Yeah. And of course, me trying to make impression, I did. And paid for it.
If you don't
as
eat
a
this,
consequence.
You're not a man.
Yeah. Dads are good at that kind of stuff.
More or less, you know, not, but, so yes. So all that to say that, I was dating Christian when I went to California. And then
because she was from California.
Yes. So I had multi purposes by doing the California. And then, that year in November, we ended up getting engaged. Oh, no, I apologize. The next year after, we ended up getting engaged. And then March 2017, we got married, 17th, 2017, St. Patrick's Day. That was not planned. And I am Irish, but people always ask me that. And I say no.
So you're coming up on 8 years.
Yes. And so, which is so wild when you say that. 8 years goes by like that.
Yep. And now you have a little daughter.
And we have a little daughter, Jerry Rose, who is she celebrated her first birthday in August. So it's
precious.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yes. My grandmother has a saying where every crow thinks thinks their baby is the blackest, which is very old. Like you could tell it's a saying, but it's true. Every parent thinks their kid is like the cutest, the most, fill in the adjective, and I definitely think my daughter is all those things. But so we were living in California in that time, and we had our daughter, and we were working, and I would say we were content thinking what we were doing right then and there. Not beyond that point, not like, I would be honest, not always excited about but we were content. Yeah. And so
you were doing ministry there.
Yes.
You were involved in ministry.
Yes, as
Her
well.
Her family had a church and a ministry there.
We were also involved in my brother-in-law's church, my other brother-in-law's ministry, and my father and mother-in-law, Rick and Eddie Reyna, their ministry as well. So we were firing off on all cylinders. But especially approaching the beginning of 2024, we all of a sudden felt like a shifting. I'm sure y'all have felt that, where all of a sudden what was secure and felt like good in that moment, all of a sudden it didn't feel that the same way. Like the grace, people say the grace wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so Christian and I were in that place where we're like, everybody else is doing their thing. Everybody else is completely geared into what they're needing to do. But it's like, we didn't feel that same thing. So we were in that place of praying and seeking God and seeing what he had for us next, And come April, I talked to him, to my grandpa, and he was letting us know that he was coming out to California for one of his speaking engagement for his tour. I called him the machine because he could go speaking and he just wouldn't stop. So he had a full tour planned out for California, and Eric was a part of it.
That's the first time I think
that was the first time time we actually had like a conversation and met. So he ended up coming out there with Eric and Tony and a couple of the pilots and stuff, and we had a great time. And then
we ate at a little diner.
Yep, it was. Oh gosh, I forgot the name of it.
It was a good place.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, but and that was 2 days, 2 days before everything changed because of course in April my grandfather was promoted to heaven, and so that brought about a completely different change. So we came back to Texas to make sure family was okay, to make sure everybody was secure and at peace and at the place.
So you think that feeling that you were feeling, you think that was the Lord preparing you for?
In hindsight now,
right.
Of course, yeah, definitely. But in that moment, I definitely didn't. It was kind of like that searching moment, or like, okay, Lord, I know there's more to this, and we were praying and seeking God for that next step, So it was one of those things where, especially when everything happened the way everything happened, I saw the situation and I saw the need, but I knew for myself, I was like, God, you got to lead me. You got to lead me to be here. You got to lead me if I'm supposed to be back in Texas, if I'm supposed to be helping my family, if I'm supposed to be helping the ministry in any capacity. You got to tell me all of this stuff, because I'm not one of those people who does things, especially saying, "Oh, God told me," and He didn't tell me. No, you have to know if God's talking to you or not, and you have to follow what He says.
Especially having a family at this point.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't want to.
You want to be where He wants you to be,
and I didn't want to, especially move my wife and my children away. My child away from the family that they knew up to that point that they're around so much. My Reyna family. So it wasn't a decision that we approached lightly, but I remember right before my grandfather's memorial, the grandkids were asked to say something, and so I ended up being the representative for my siblings and my cousins. So I was up that a night or two before, and I was just I couldn't sleep, and it was 4 a.m. and then God just kind of dropped into me like what I would want to say, what I'd want to share. And then after that point, it was just like a moment with a bunch of images, like a downloading experience, right? And the thing I heard Him say to me, it was inside me, and it said, son, your family needs you. And I was like, that's all I needed to hear. And the rest of it was just taking that step of faith to be like, okay, God, you told me my family needed me. You told me that I needed to be back here. I'm going to take that step in faith and just come back here. And I'm so thankful that my wife was on the same page with me. She'd been praying, and she knew, and she felt that same kind of direction. So when then I said that to her, she was on board with it. And especially, that's how I knew it was God, because my wife, I remember when we lived in Burbank for a time, and that was only 45 minutes away from her family. And that was challenging for her. She'd be like, I miss my family.
Yeah.
And we eventually moved closer back to them. And I was like, I had told God, I'm not going to move her unless you tell me to, because I'm not going to put her through that unless we.
And here you are both on the same page to move across the
country. Exactly.
And there was a grace for everybody.
That's the thing I was about to say too, is that the moment you choose to do what God tells you to do, his grace follows you in that. And I think we've all experienced the fact of just making that decision. We're going to do what you told us to do, God. His grace has carried us the rest of the way. And to be honest, I couldn't imagine it being, we're in the best timeline of what this could have been, honestly. And his direction and his grace has just carried us each and every step of the way. So that's a
definite adventure in faith.
I know.
Yeah,
it really is. So all that to say too is that I'm very happy to be taking that adventure of faith with you guys.
Yeah, well, you've been obviously a great support for Miss Carolyn as well.
Yes.
As well as us, and it's been a great honor to.
Guys, stop it. Stop it.
A true God said.
No.
True God said.
Okay, my head won't fit through the door if you say anymore.
We know that's not true.
Now, okay.
Well, if you don't know him, he is a very humble person. So.
I'm the humblest guy I know. I'm just kidding. No.
Just like Moses. He wrote that about himself.
Okay, I've done my part. Now,
okay.
I have
Spotlight is off of me.
If I have flipped the script to you, I want to ask, how did Eric and Nikki Deaton get to Texas? And then what has brought you to JSMI, especially in the capacity that y'all are in now?
Wow.
That is like a loaded can.
That is a
can of worms.
I think it would probably start with me, because when I was young, my parents got radically saved when I was 5. I was young, 5 years old, but they got radically saved and they were in the Word of Faith movement.
Yeah.
And so I grew up listening to Kenneth Copeland, Lester Sumrall, Norval Hayes, Oral Roberts, all these great men of God that were your grandpa's mentors, and so by the time, I was, becoming a teenager or whatever, I was hearing Jerry Savelle, Kenneth Copeland, all the ones, Keith Moore, all these people from our generation.
Good
and
stuff.
And so when I went off to college and met Eric, we ended up getting married. He did not grow up Word of Faith, but grew up in the church. And so when I introduced him to Jerry Savelle, when I introduced him to Word of Faith, Jerry Savelle was his favorite minister.
Oh, okay, yeah.
His favorite minister. So when we did not know, leaving college, he was a communications major, I was a business major. We did not know that we would be involved in ministry. Even though my parents were pastors and stuff, it never had occurred to me that I'm kind of probably like you.
Yeah.
You just go about your career, you do what God leads you to do, and then all of a sudden you come back to ministry and you didn't even know that was in your future, even though it was in your past with your parents, grandparents, whatever.
Yeah.
And so when we came into ministry and started actually preaching, Eric's first message was a Dr. Savelle message. His first message he ever preached was
going to the other side.
Going to the other side.
Going to the other side. He did his hand like this. I'm going. So his left hand. I'm going to the other side.
Left hand?
Oh yeah, going to the other side.
I mean, we'd go into our church weight room and or whatever, and walk on treadmills or whatever, and they would have VHSs.
The storm may come up against you.
The church had a weight room?
The storm may come up against you, but I'm going to the other side.
Oh.
And so we'd have this VHS, and we'd have these stack of VHSs in there we could choose from. And there was Jerry Savelle, VHSs in there, and cassette tapes. And so we grew in our young adult life, as a young married couple, listening to that, learning to tithe, learning to expect the extraordinary, to not limit God.
Ordering his books, his resources and things.
And
you almost feel like, you get to know people through.
Which he always said,
which he said through their resources, like he talked about the law of increase by association. Yeah. And even if you can't walk with someone personally, but you can get the resources and you can know. So you feel like, well, I knew the Savelle family.
Yeah.
And we didn't personally know them. We did not personally know them. And but we were partners with the ministry in our young married life. We, every year we would partner with a few ministries, and so that was just one consistently that we partnered with through the years. Outside of our church. That's what my parents always taught us is to, support ministries that teach you. And so we did, and never realizing that we would like meet them, much less meet them, eat dinner with them, work with them, travel with them. I mean, it's been probably one of the biggest blessings of our life.
That's amazing.
Yeah, especially when you consider someone, a hero in the faith, and then you get to spend time with them. Like
personal time. We
traveled all over the world, and just amazing experiences, and so much that you learn, through just hanging out with them and things, and the way they think.
Yeah.
And it's another level. The faith. It wasn't just something that was preached. It was a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they lived this. Like, this is the way that they lived. I remember one time I was talking to Brother Jerry about some things I was going through, and I would never try to put my problems on him, but this was like an open door where I could talk to him a little bit. So I started telling him, this is happening, that's happening, these people and this. And he listened very graciously. I told you the story, but he listened very graciously. He let me finish. And he basically just responded this way: yeah, but you have favor. And that's all he said. Because he studied favor. He had more resources on favor than any other preacher in our generation. So when he said that to me, I was like, I have favor. I have favor. And it just began to really sink in. Like, it's just as easy for someone to believe they have favor than to assume that they, people are thinking the worst. And so then that took me on a journey to understand that revelation that he was preaching. And so that's just one example. But, going back to what she was talking about, like, I got saved at a real young age. I was 5 years old. When I was 8 or 9, a preacher came to town, and I was in West Monroe, Louisiana. You know the show Duck Dynasty? That's my hometown.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
I didn't know that.
I didn't ever see people with the beards like that. But that
it was only them.
Yeah. So I grew up there, and this preacher came to town, and he called up people to get the baptism of the Holy Spirit. So I went up. Well, when he laid his hands on me, the power of God hit me, and I began to speak in tongues, and I fell out on the ground, and I laid on the ground for 30 minutes, and the Lord, just like showed me visions of my life. And then after that, I just buried it way down deep. And I didn't even tell Nikki that even ever happened. And so when she said, neither of us knew we'd be in the ministry. Well, I was pursuing business.
Yeah.
I had forgotten about that,
Yeah. That experience.
Until, we got to, her dad's a pastor. We got to his church, and a prophet came to town and, called me out and said, you had an experience when you were 8 or 9 years, and began to describe the things. And so from that point is when, I said, okay, Lord, I surrender my life. I've maybe not necessarily ran from it, but I wasn't necessarily chasing that calling. And I know Miss Carolyn, I've heard her say, you have that choice to accept that call, yes or no, and to begin to consecrate yourself and pursue that, in your life. And so that's where we began. We're 25 years old, and now. And
we're all in.
We're all in.
We're all in. We did youth ministry, young adult ministry, praise and worship leader, administrator at the church. Whatever there was.
Many hats.
We were doing it, landscaping, whatever. We were like all in for the church.
So anytime I'd go on the road and to make a sales call or whatever, I got Jerry Savelle tapes in there. And so I'm just eating up the word of faith.
Wow.
And the word of faith, like the way I grew up, you're saved one day, not saved the next. And it's like I got saved 175 times. I was always at the altar. I'd pray over my food. Lord, please bless our food and forgive me of my sins, even the ones I don't know about. In Jesus' name, amen. And that was like a prayer. But the word of faith changed my life through your grandfather and Kenneth Copeland and others.
And my dad.
And Nikki's dad taught the word of faith. I mean, it just changed our life, and we began to pursue that. And like she said, we didn't need to pray about getting involved with things in the church. If there was a need, we were just available,
willing,
and willing to get involved in any capacity. And that's pretty much, we did
and then
that.
It was kind of like what you were saying around, I don't remember when it was.
2016.
2016. We started feeling that same thing you were describing, where you think, why am I discontent?
Yeah.
Like I should be content. I'm doing
shifting.
ministry.
Yeah.
Like, why am I not content with what we have? You know, and it was just something that was stirring. And so during that time, we had also met Pastors Justin and Annette Bridges over at JSMI's Church Heritage of Faith, had become friends with them and gotten to know them and would talk on the phone with them. And we just kind of felt like God was stirring us to move here. And so that was a big move because we really thought we would be in Michigan the rest of our lives.
Wow.
You know,
Such a
working
shift.
with my parents.
Literally a whole other state, whole other way of, you know,
I mean,
life.
Yeah, kind of like you, California to Texas, Michigan to Texas.
Kind of actually.
Yeah.
And I remember it's like December of, and there's a lot more to the story, but December of 2018, and I walk up the steps and there's these huge boxes with clothes in the boxes, and Nikki had packed up her whole closet, and I was like, we're doing this.
Wow,
we're doing this.
It's happening.
And so
one of your grandpa's favorite books to me, speaking of what you were talking about earlier, was earlier books back in the day was Expect the Extraordinary.
Yeah.
That meant the world to us because he'd heard from God like in the 1900s. And
the 1900s.
The 1980s.
and he had shared what God had revealed to him in this book about starting to expect the extraordinary, the uncommon. Not to expect the common, but the uncommon. And that took our believing to another. I don't know at that time if I had, but when that book came out, if I had really been, I expected good, but not extraordinary. You know, kind of like expecting favor in your life. And when we got everything packed up in the U-Haul and we knew we were coming to Texas, before we got in
Hooked
the truck,
up our speedboat.
No.
Everything's ready. Yeah,
speedboat
like
ready.
it's warmer down there, so we'll get to use this more.
Finally get to use this thing. Brush it off.
So before we got in the truck to actually get on the road, we took a picture in front of in front of the car with the book Expect the Extraordinary in our hands, because we didn't know why we were coming. We had not at that time even had a conversation with your grandma or grandpa that we were coming. We just knew God was calling us here, and we were just hoping that it was the extraordinary. Wow. And so when we moved here in 2019,
somehow he found out
we were moving here, and he called.
Somehow
and
got our
said
number.
That he knew we were here.
Wow.
Because we were partners with the ministry at that time, and we had only met him and shook his hand. That was it. And he called us and said, well, I'd like to meet with you guys, you know, call the office and tell me when you can come in. So we did. And about 3 months later, we finally met with him, and he sat down with us and said, so it was just the three of us. And he said, so why are you here? And we both looked at each other and looked at him, looked at each other, and then and Eric said to him, well, we were kind of hoping you would tell us why we were here. Yeah. And we all just laughed.
That's funny.
And then he said, well, I think I know why you're here. But I'm not going to tell you right now. But and then he asked us to start coming into the office and working at JSMI.
Wow. And a few months later, I was traveling the world with him.
Yeah.
And and his cousin, Joe McCroskey, who's traveled with him for 45 years around the world. And we've been all over Africa and UK and Australia and all over the United States and Canada. And it has truly been an adventure in faith.
And like we said in the first podcast, the cornerstone of adventure is that it's into the unknown. Yeah. And y'all would have never been able to predict something like that.
No.
Would ever happen in like a million years.
Never.
You know, but you got to take that step, and then there's another step, and there's another step. You know, oftentimes we don't see the whole picture, but that's the walk of faith. You know, taking a step of faith. Then God shows you the next step, and that's what we did.
Yeah.
Well,
and here we sit.
I know.
On the Adventures in Faith podcast.
This is a step right here. Truthfully, this is a step right now
podcast,
to do this. And I believe as we keep taking these steps in this podcast, it's going to grow and blossom and become something really awesome. And it'll be another testimony, another like a landmark of our adventure in faith. Yeah. So
aren't we having fun?
I'm having fun.
Aren't we having so much fun?
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
But this is another thank you for talking. I enjoyed talking. I enjoyed hearing
your story as
I know.
well.
I shared a little bit more, more embarrassing than probably I needed to, but that's okay.
No, we loved it.
Yeah.
Yes. And I want to encourage you to continue taking these steps of faith yourself. I know God has done things for you, but he's not stopping. He's going to continue to do great things for you in this year and in the year to come. So
advancing and progressing.
Advancing and progressing. We're not stopping. We're continuing. We're advancing and progressing. So thank you for joining us for this episode of the Adventures in Faith podcast. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate you liking, subscribing, commenting, following, be a part of what we do, because these are going to start coming out regularly, and we'd love to hear your feedback and for you to be a part of it. So, and thank you for joining us on Adventures in Faith.